Good evening. Droupadi Murmu, the NDA's presidential candidate, will be India's new president. She is now president-elect after decisively defeating her rival, the opposition candidate Yashwant Sinha. This is a victory at so many levels. Symbolic, political, a victory for women. It's a victory for the tribal community as well. She was the first woman college graduate from her village, a strong leader in the past, as an MLA, as a minister, and as a former governor. What is clear is that in these elections, there was cross-voting in her favour. Another example of complete disunity amongst the opposition. It was also a political masterstroke of the BJP, which has been accused of not doing enough for tribal rights. The JMM, an ally of the Congress, voted in favour of Ms. Murmu. So did the BJD, so did the YSR Congress and the Uddhav Thackeray faction of the Shiv Sena. Later on the show, the senior Congress leader Sachin Pilot will be joining me on the other big news story of the day, Sonia Gandhi questioned by the Enforcement Directorate in the National Herald case. Is this a case of money laundering or is this out and out political vendetta as has been alleged? Well, joining us Dr. Shantanu Sen, Rajya Sabha MP and National Spokesperson of the Trinamool Congress, Amar Patnaik, Rajya Sabha MP of the BJD, Yogendra Yadav joins us as well. Satish Chandra Dubey, Rajya Sabha MP of the BJP, will be with us, and Dr. Nasir Hussain, Rajya Sabha MP of the Congress, with us this evening. Thank you all very much for being on this program. Mr. Amar Patnaik, what does this mean for tribal rights across the country? And what does this mean, sir, in your opinion, as a political masterstroke for the BJP, even in your state, Odisha?
Thank you, Vishnu. But before I come to the question, let me read out the tweet of Naveen Patnaik, which probably you would have seen. He says that I congratulate the daughter of Orissa, Srimati Droupadi Murmu, on being elected as the 15th President of India. It's indeed a very proud moment for everyone in Orissa that she has been elected to the highest office in the country. Her journey from an humble beginning to become the first citizen of the country is indeed inspiring, and her journey is a shining example of women empowerment. So basically, I'm very happy. We are all very happy. The whole Orissa state is very happy for she's an Oriya, of course. But most important thing, I mean, I say that is very important, that she's a woman. She is, of course, an ST, and even more important, that she belongs to a very humble beginning. She has worked her life up. She has worked hard to reach the position where she is. First, as you said, she was a councillor. She started from a councillor. Then she became an MLA. Then she became a minister. And then she handled the constitutional position of the governor with aplomb. So I think what we are missing out in this, in this identity kind of narrative is the fact that she is a tribal woman with very little means, working her way up by dint of her hard work and determination and contributing to public life all through her life and then reaching this position. And that is what Naveen Patnaik has supported, that she's a woman who has represented not only Orissa, but she represents a process of empowerment of women and engine of growth.
Right, sure. We're also joined by Dr. Abhishek Manu Singhvi. Dr. Singhvi, what about opposition unity in all of this? Because it's clear from the numbers that there has been cross-voting which has taken place. Where does that actually place you if this is what's happened in these elections with regard to the vice presidential election that's coming up?
I think too much is being read into this. This is not a political election in that sense. I think the results, even though we have to say it after the elections, were largely foregone conclusions. Certainly the second one is even more than the first one, the vice president election. I think the real purpose of these elections is to set up symbolic people. There is nothing wrong with Ms. Murmu. There is nothing wrong with Mr. Yashwant Sinha. These are symbols of two opposing thoughts, viewpoints and ideologies. And I think it's important to set up to make that point, the larger ideological point. I don't think any of the reasonable-minded people in our side have ever criticized in a vicious manner Ms. Murmu, or nor do we intend to. She is it's a great achievement for this person to have reached where she is. Equally,
no, absolutely.
Mr. Yashwant Sinha has conducted with great dignity.
No, I think Dr. Singhvi, I think it's fantastic, both of these candidates, and I don't think there's any question about them at all. But I'm asking you a political question, sir. Is this not a masterstroke of the BJP, a party which has been said not to have done enough for tribal rights? She is from Odisha, and yet in a state where they're perhaps looking to establish themselves further, even though they're relatively close to the BJD, they have identified themselves as a champion of tribal rights. There are other parties, the JMM, for example, an ally of yours.
I would say it's a good choice by the ruling party. They could have chosen a more divisive figure and would have greater difficulty. I would also say that you tend to forget that there are no whips in such elections, even in your own party. If there are no whips in such elections in your own party, you can imagine that different parties who may be totally opposed to the BJP, and certainly I think the Jharkhand party and the Maharashtra party are opposed. I don't think you can use the word cross-voting for BJD, which has been largely supportive of the BJP, or at least selectively supportive of the BJP. I don't think you can use that word for the YSR.
Right.
But yes, the other parties can be, it's very consistent for them to be totally opposed to BJP ideologies, and yet for the president...
If I'm not mistaken, the Shiv Sena, Uddhav Thackeray faction also backed Ms. Murmu.
Yes, I said Maharashtra and Jharkhand, I said so. I'm saying it is wholly consistent with their continued principled opposition to the BJP. It is only consistent for them to support Ms. Murmu. Sure. That is a choice they make. As I said, if there is no whip even within the party, then you can imagine that there cannot be in these matters an approach like that. Yes, had the BJP made the mistake of choosing a more divisive figure or a more...
But Dr. Singhvi, respectfully, the lack of a whip is hardly a reason or an excuse to say that, that's why there was no opposition unity. The fact of the matter, sir, there's no opposition unity. And there's no opposition unity even for the elections for Ms. Alva. The Trinamool Congress says that they're going to abstain. The Aam Aadmi Party haven't made up their minds. Of course, there's no whip or whatever it is, but where's the unity?
I think now you're going to the vice president. For the presidential elections, barring these two states, there has been an approach which is consistent. I think for the vice president's election, the Aam Aadmi Party has not denied its solidarity. They are largely supportive. I'm a little surprised at the TMC's reaction.
Yep.
But I think these are elections which, do you think that by voting in a different way for these posts, let me put it another way around, do you think there is the slightest jot of disunity on all other opposition to the ruling NDA? The answer has to be no.
Okay.
For these persons, yes. But generally, in the 2024 elections, in policies, in issues, in Mr. Modi's approaches, there is complete unity that he is wrong.
Okay, all right. Thanks, sir. Just be with us if you can. I want to go across to Dr. Shantanu Sen of the Trinamool Congress. Dr. Sen, it is I'm sure you would, and Mamata Banerjee, of course, has reached out in a tweet, in a message, and I think it's common consensus that we have a wonderful new president, and I think it's great that she's from the tribal community, and she's worked very hard to be where she is. That said, sir, my question is specific. It's about politics. It's about opposition disunity. And the Trinamool Congress is not backing Margaret Alva either. So, what does that say about the opposition, sir? Dr. Sen.
See, first of all, your voice was not very clear to me. Whatever I have heard, my answer to your question is, see, this was a fight between two ideologies. This was not at all a political fight, number one. Number two, our party Supremo has categorically said, had it been discussed before, so far the candidature of Droupadi Murmu ji is concerned, the entire scenario could have been different. Definitely, personally and on behalf of my party, I heartily congratulate the newly elected president of our country. But we strongly condemn the way BJP is trying to portray it as if BJP is a pro-Dalit party. We strongly condemn this depiction. We strongly condemn this narrative because statistics prove BJP is not at all in favor of Dalit at large. This very Narendra Modi ji, our learned Prime Minister, when he happened to be the Chief Minister of Gujarat, during his tenure of Chief Ministership, 94% of Gujarat tribal children was suffering from malnourishment. Right. This very Narendra Modi ji, he has started Tribal Pride Day in Madhya Pradesh. where crime on tribals has increased by more than 25%. They have collected 15 crores of rupees for the development of the tribals. Unfortunately, majority of that fund has been spent for BJP political programs. Even few months back, one Dalit lady was assaulted and molested at a distance, at a few kilometers distance from the presidential residence at Delhi. So the way BJP is trying to play this Dalit card, this is absolutely condemnable.
A response, in fact, from Satish Chandra Dubey, the Rajya Sabha MP of the BJP. Mr. Dubey, the point being mentioned by the Trinamool Congress is that this is tokenism. That in as much as Droupadi Murmu may be a wonderful woman and a wonderful president for us, the BJP is not a tribal party. It's not a party of four tribal communities across India. How would you respond? Mr. Dubey, can you hear me?
नमस्ते।
हाँ नमस्कार दुबे जी, सवाल ये था और ऑल इंडिया तृणमूल कांग्रेस से सवाल ये था कि बीजेपी कोई ट्राइबल राइट्स के लिए कोई खास जाना नहीं जाता है और ये शायद टोकनिज्म है कि आपने मुर्मू जी को इस पोस्ट के लिए नॉमिनेट किया था।
देखिए, ऐसा है कि पहले तो मैं आपके चैनल के माध्यम से देशवासियों को शुभकामना देता हूं और मैं आपको बता दूं कि अटल जी की सरकार ने आदिवासी समाज के लिए जो आरक्षण देने का काम किया था, एक बहुत बड़ा उपलब्धि है। मैं जहां से बिलोंग करता हूं, बिहार में 2-4 सीट ऐसा है जहां आदिवासी लोगों की संख्या है। जैसे वाल्मीकि नगर लोकसभा में जहां से मैं पूर्व सांसद रहा हूं, वहां के लोग आज के डेट में भारतीय जनता पार्टी को अपना समझता है, खास करके अटल जी को अपना आदर्श मानता है। और अटल जी की सरकार के समय में ही 1% की आरक्षण दी गई और हम सबका साथ, सबका विकास, सबका विश्वास जीतने का वाला पार्टी का नाम भारतीय जनता पार्टी है। सबको साथ लेके चलने का बात है। आरोप लगाना तो किसी पर कोई आरोप कभी कोई जड़ सकता है।
योगेंद्र यादव जी, इज द बीजेपी truly representative of tribal rights, or is this tokenism enough to sort of propel them to that stage? Have they done enough?
I don't think today is the day to debate BJP's relationship with tribals and what they have done. Elections are over. The first thing that we should do is to not merely congratulate the new president-elect. The entire country should say, welcome, Madam President. We're proud of you. We ought to be proud of the new president because not only because she comes from Adivasi women background. Mind you, there are about 6 crore of them, Adivasi women in this country.
Right.
And if there's anyone who's on the bottom rung of this country in terms of education, in terms of health, it is the Adivasi women. So the very fact, just the symbolic fact of her standing on 26th January and taking salute from all the...
It's incredible for India.
Everyone.
It's incredible.
It is incredible. Every Indian should take pride in that. I don't think we need to, I mean, the larger politics of it, of course, the BJP has played very smart and has kind of outsmarted the opposition, both in terms of symbolism and in terms of real politic of getting people together and so on. Now, these are limited things. BJP candidate was there to win in any case. The only one thing I wish to say is that President's office is a symbolic office. We should not expect any dramatic change. Please do remember, this country has had not one but 2 Dalit presidents. I don't think the condition of Dalits changed. One of them was from Congress, the other was during the BJP period. The condition of Dalit hasn't changed. Please remember, at the time of the worst massacre against the Sikhs, a Sikh was the president of India at that time. So let's not get into these hyperboles.
It's supposed to be an apolitical post and it is symbolic at a certain level. But I think it is also a victory for one woman, and the fact that she's risen through the system, both in terms of her education, in terms of her politics, first as an MLA, then as an MP, then as a governor, and now president. I think it's an incredible victory for Droupadi Murmu as a human being. It's just remarkable. I think that's
an extraordinary thing that every Indian should be proud of.
Absolutely, every Indian is proud. Dr. Sen, you had a point to make. Go ahead, sir.
I will just make 2 important points. First, to my BJP spokesperson, the issue is, you are talking about Atal Bihari Vajpayee ji, I would like to humbly remind you, this very Atal Bihari Vajpayee ji advised Narendra Modi ji ki tum Raj Dharma palan karo. Narendra Modi is not following the path of Atal Bihari Vajpayee, number one. And number two, I would like to remind you that what is there at the back of the mind of BJP, there are few elections going to take place in the coming few months in few states, in which 135 Dalit dominated assembly seats are there, out of which BJP could win only 20% in the last election. That was the main scenario, what was there at the back of their mind. They are playing this Dalit card for this only.
Okay.
They are not at all a pro-Dalit party as a whole.
Okay, 1 second, सतीश जी आप इस पे रिस्पॉन्ड करेंगे कि ये नॉमिनेशन जो है मुर्मू जी का ये इलेक्शंस को देखते हुए किया गया है।
देखिए, हम एक पॉलिटिकल पार्टी हैं और सब जितना भी पॉलिटिकल पार्टी है, कोई भी ऐसा परिस्थिति जब आता है तो अपना फायदा घाटा देख के ही करता है, लेकिन भारतीय जनता पार्टी ऐसा नहीं किया है। भारतीय जनता पार्टी को 3 बार आपको राष्ट्रपति बनाने का मौका मिला, वोट करने का, उसके अपने नेतृत्व में देख रेख करने का मौका मिला। एक बार आप देखें अटल जी की सरकार में भारत के योग्य व्यक्ति को बनाया गया, कलाम साहब को। दूसरा बार मौका मिला तो कोविंद साहब को बनाया गया। तीसरा बार देखिए तो एक आदिवासी परिवार के उसमें भी कहां एक महिला को बनाने का मौका मिला, तो नाम प्रोजेक्ट करने में कहीं दिक्कत नहीं हुआ, कहीं मरमरिक नहीं हुआ। हमने प्रोजेक्ट भी किया और पूरे देश के लोग उसी दिन रिजल्ट आउट कर दिया था जिस दिन नाम का मीडिया में आया कि इनको राष्ट्रपति के उम्मीदवार बनाया जाता है। तो कहीं ना कहीं विपक्ष के पास कोई मुद्दा नहीं है, तो अब इसी ढंग के बात करके पब्लिक को बरगलाने का काम करेगा, ऐसा कुछ नहीं है। हम लोग का एकदम सबका साथ, सबका विकास, सबका विश्वास के साथ चलने वाले लोग हैं।
Well, look, I think at the end of the day, I would agree with what Yogendra ji. I usually agree with him. I'll agree with him more today. Let's keep the politics aside. It's a wonderful victory for a woman in this country, a tribal leader in this country, and you know, people from different political parties, I think at a personal level and even at the level of their party, have no problem with her whatsoever. And let's hope she makes a wonderful president for us. I'd like to thank you all very much for being with us. I'm going to move on now to our next topic. The senior Congress leader Sachin Pilot spoke to me earlier on, a couple of hours back, on a day in which Sonia Gandhi was questioned by the Enforcement Directorate in the National Herald case. Is this a case of money laundering or of out-and-out political vendetta? Well, joining us now, the senior Congress leader Sachin Pilot, on a day in which Congress party leaders and workers protested across the country, with Sonia Gandhi being questioned by the Enforcement Directorate. Sachin, thanks very much for being with us. How do you respond to the allegations that this is a case of money laundering that needs to be investigated?
This case was raked up at this point because we are facing many state elections. This is an old case. There is no FIR filed in this case. There is no transaction that has been done by anybody from Mrs. Gandhi or Mr. Rahul Gandhi.
Yep.
And I think, to my mind, the singular objective of waking up this case again was to kind of target the opposition, and in particular the Congress party, so that the message goes that if you oppose the government of India, if you oppose the BJP ideology, all forces of the government of India will be let loose on you. It's not just about an individual or a party. Look at the country today, Vishnu. We have a huge agrarian crisis. You know, the rupee and dollar is like 80 rupees to a dollar now. We have food inflation. We have highest ever unemployment. The freedom of press is being curbed. Globally, we are facing many challenges on our borders for China. Government of India refuses to answer any such question. So best way to divert the attention of the people of India and the media is to rake up controversies, to attack, to allege, to defame, to chastise leaders of the opposition. And Mrs. Gandhi has been Congress president for 20 odd years. She has subjected herself to the questioning. Mr. Gandhi has gone many times. We will answer the queries of the agencies, but the fact that the country must know that every single agency is being used for a political objective. 7-8 years we've seen. It can't be a mere coincidence that only the opposition people are targeted, charge-sheeted, raided and subjected to questioning.
Sure.
If you align with the leadership of Delhi in BJP, then you're fine. If you don't, then they will come and get you. So this is basically done to demoralize and muffle the voice of the opposition.
Sachin, what about the allegation that all of these assets which were transferred to Young India, which was set up by Rahul Gandhi and Sonia Gandhi in I think 2010, are assets which should be considered their assets and therefore it is in a sense their wealth? which needs to be accounted for.
You see, Vishnu, please understand, this newspaper was started before our independence. And every political party has a mouthpiece on paper. Pandit Nehru wanted to establish this paper as a national paper. So a Congress party and a paper associated with it needs some infusion of funds. They created a channel to do that. There's been no transaction. There's been no withdrawal of money. There's no exchange of money. There's no sale of assets. There's nothing that's happened. It's basically just a case put on to make sure that, people get entangled in the inquiries and the summoning and the questioning. There is no FIR registered in any case. So there's no criminality as such. The ED is now only questioning to create a political atmosphere in the country that even someone like Mrs. Gandhi can be questioned, Mr. Gandhi can be questioned. So it's just a messaging to the opposition that no matter who you are, we will come after you. So there is not an iota of evidence in this case that has been brought forward by the agency or the government of India for that matter. This is, I think, from what I recall, 2007 or 8, I think it started. Then the case was finished. It was picked up again just now.
It's been more than a decade since it started. Sachin,
so it's clearly political. I mean, the point I'm trying to make is that we're not protesting because of it's only Mrs. Gandhi or the Congress party. It's for the people of India to know that in a robust republic like ours, a democracy like ours, the space of opposition cannot be curtailed to a point where we can't even demonstrate outside our own office in a non-violent manner.
But Sachin, let me just ask you one more question before we talk about some of the issues you're mentioning. The allegation or the charge is that Young India claims to be a charitable body, but they've not done any charitable work. So how would you respond to that?
I mean, every company, every NGO, every entity that is formed, everything is on record, papers are there, scrutiny can be done, questions can be asked. My larger point is that it's not about nitpicking a company or a private limited company or an NGO or a trust or organization. Ideas of messaging that these agencies are deployed just to frustrate and to harass the leadership, that's more important. See, if there was a transparent functioning of the ED for the last 7-8 years, we'd have no problem. Okay. Nobody will have a problem. But we all know that this is being done. Singular target is to summon people to make sure they don't ask the tough questions inside Parliament and outside Parliament. And that reality has to be told to people of India so they know what's going on in New Delhi.
Sure. Sachin Pilot, thank you very much for speaking to us. Thanks very much indeed. All right, so a couple of comments which have come in on Cool. Let's just bring those in. So, political vendetta by the ruling establishment and its effort to divert the public is what one viewer writes in. Let's see what the other comments are. The Modi government is attacking every political party purely on vendetta terms, and Shiv says, has the government tried to bring every political opponent under the net of the puppet agencies like the Enforcement Directorate, the CBI, or the Income Tax Department? Well, that's it then. There's a lot more coming up on NDTV.